Hi everyone, my name's Pieta Valentine. I've written 2 books, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise. And today's session is on coping with the stigma and prejudice of dementia. So now, say going on from the previous video, Jim is now in the institution with all the other residents. How to cope with this stigma of prejudice, or how to cope with this stigma and prejudice of dementia now, once you're in the facility. Of course, there's less prejudice once you get into a facility because everyone has dementia there, and that's a known fact. You know, everyone's working with it day to day, caring for it, doing everything that needs to be done. But still, actually, a lot of the residents don't forget the stigma and prejudice they experienced outside the unit, and they refer to that, and often. So it's embedded deeply, that experience. Also, occasionally you will get relatives coming in who you can see have that, stigma. The sort of frozen featured, shut down, stiff upper lips, approach. Hardly able to communicate with anyone, including their relative. And, you feel mercy for them actually. They're just so shut down, but they just think they're a step above. But it's not often. Some couple of sons I've seen that have been like that. Most relatives that do come in, are supportive. That's why they're there. They're supportive and helpful. But what does happen is that there's still the outer rim of it going on. For example, sometimes sons, I've seen this as well, are happy to see their mother, but it's the wives that are not happy to come into the unit or be associated with it, And they can be stiff upper lip, imperious approach, whereas the sons are happy to be there with mum, but the wife is not so keen at all. And so that restricts him in his movement. So, there's various layers and levels happening everywhere, but at the end of the day, in terms of coping with it, the residents generally, once they've settled down, it's terribly stressful once they first go into the unit, it's just so hard for them to be able to adjust to not being able to get outside and have their freedom and, liberties that they've been used to all their life. But once they've adjusted and settled down, which, most do, if it's a positive, supportive dementia community, then they begin to realise, well, to cope here, I need to adjust to this community. This is my community now. This is where I live. This is my home. This is where my room is, and, my bathroom and everything I own and have, actually. So I have, just like any other community, as human beings, we do adjust, even when we're elderly. And it's not a hospital, it's not a hospice, it's a dementia community. And so residents do best when they can adjust to it as that. So in time, in order to cope, what happens is that they just form their own little group. So even, for example, if they're invited over to the Anzac service in the big village, which was the case in a place that I worked at. It's a big event in New Zealand, Australia, and New Zealand Anzac servicemen from World War I and II. That's very meaningful. But, you'd go over to the village to the Anzac service, and the dementia residents would be relegated to the back row, 50 rows back from the front, and they'd be the last ones to get a cup of tea and biscuit and the first ones to have to go. So they didn't like that. Neither they should. So they just decided, no, I'm not going over there anymore. And they didn't. They just stopped going. And they said they weren't interested. And even when other events came up, it was even the Christmas events, it was hard to get them over there. They said, oh, no, we've got our own Anzac service here. No, we've got our lovely, Anzac posters and lovely Netflix, whatever, going on with Anzac service and smart TV. And no, we don't need to go over there. And so they just coped by building their own little community amongst themselves and supporting each other Yes, this was the way to go. Now, one dramatic example of coping was one man. He was in his late 70s. He was from the forces again, strong men, those men in the forces. And he was a lovely guy. He is, I'm sure, a lovely guy. Younger, his wife was even younger still, and he was extremely distressed when he came into the dementia unit because, you know, he'd been outdoors and physical, and he'd been, you know, right into sailing and yachting and swimming, and he'd led a really physical life, and having to come into a dementia unit with no physical activity hardly at all was just like so barren. And he really missed his family, loved his wife, and it was like maximum stress for him, you know, unmanageable stress at one point. His wife was very supportive. She came and visited him a lot, but he thought deeply, this guy, you know, he had a dreadful memory, you know, but he would think, and he had aphasia, so he couldn't always get his words out well, but when he did, you know, he had a great command of the English language when he could get his words out. So he spoke to me one day and he said, look, Pieta, I now realise that I have to let my wife go because I can't keep her chained to this unit. She needs her own life. Oh, I was so deeply moved. I thought, what a brave man. That is bravery. That is courage of the highest degree. To let go of someone that you love at that moment. And do you know he did? Do you know he did that? When she came in, he just distanced himself. He started distancing himself. He started putting his energy into the group. And he said, look, we are family now. We are one. We are here for each other. We can rise above this. And they did. He became their leader. He became the spokesperson. He had a force about him. He lifted the others up, and they did rise. And that's why I've written The Residents Rise. So that is how the group coped in this remarkable way to develop this wonderful, magical, beautiful dementia community, which I was very privileged to be a part of and will stay with me forever. And that's why I am doing these YouTube videos, to be able to enable the residents to have a voice so that they can be heard and all their marvellous wisdom can be recognised and accounted for. Thank you.